Hello, Garland Nixon here with Scott Ritter. We got lots of things talking about. To talk about. This is our first show since the inauguration. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Scott Ritter. Don't forget, go to scottritter.com. That's where all of Scott's good work is. And of course, there is a donate button there so you can be a part of the movement, whatever the hell the movement is. I don't know what it is, but you can be a part of it and you can help Scott with all of the work that he's doing. You know how important it is. And of course, we got a join button here now so you can become a member. It's like $4.99 a month or something. I got a Substack. And of course, you see all the stuff scrolling across the bottom. So anything you can do to help alternative media is very, very welcome. All right, Scott, let's start here. I named it Trump, Russia, and China. There seems to be a turn has been made here when it comes to great power relationships. I suspect, and I'm always suspecting of a very, very powerful people making decisions. But when I look in the audience and I see all these people that hated Donald Trump, and they're all the most powerful tech bros in the world, every one of them. And the more I look, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's the guy from, holy crap, that's the guy that owns, they're all there. Forget it. They're all there, right? Throw a thought at you, Scott, and you can elaborate on it. I feel like there's some billionaires. These are people that literally, they want to try to find a way to put their consciousness in a machine so they can live forever, right? That perhaps they looked at the Biden administration and said, you can do whatever you want to play with your toys, but you almost had a nuclear war and killed us all. We're going to draw the line. You're not allowed to kill us all. We're far too rich for that. We're going to make an adjustment. It seems to me that decisions have been an abrupt adjustment from we got to send more missiles and blow up everything, and we're going to take Taiwan. Oh, boy, we're going into the Black Sea now. We're really going to pin the Russians in. That's on January 19th. January 20th, hey, let's call Russia and China, and let's perhaps have a meeting. That ain't an accident. Anyway, your thoughts, Scott Ritter.
Well, what's interesting is that this is Trump's second go-around. On the first one, he didn't have the billionaires lining up with him. On the first one, the billionaires stayed with Team Woke. Because, look, we can be critical of the billionaires. They deserve to be criticized, et cetera. But they didn't get billionaires because they're stupid. Okay, they became billionaires because they have an innate sense of how to manipulate a system for their financial gain. And a lot of what they do is political. A whole bunch of what they do is political. Again, you don't get to be a billionaire unless you've gamed Washington, D.C., you've gamed the establishment. The establishment has to deem you worthy of your billions. And so to watch them jump ship is it's a litmus test. They didn't jump ship in 2016, 2017 because they viewed Trump as a freak show. This was a one and done. This wasn't going to happen. Team Woke was going to come back, the whole thing. The Team Woke is dead. That's the takeaway here. Team Woke is dead, finished, done, stake driven through the heart. The people that make billions of dollars, if they thought that the MAGA phenomena was just another 4 years, they're not going to risk it all by jumping ship. They're lining up because they know that Team Woke is dead and that the future of American politics for maybe the next 2 decades is this MAGA movement. And they're trying to get aligned to it. And that's something that everybody needs to keep in mind here because, again, these billionaires aren't stupid. You don't make $1 billion by being ignorant. You make $1 billion by having your finger on the pulse of as many important entities out there and getting a feel on what the market will take, what politically, what will be accepted, and things of that nature. These people know that Trump is looking to build something that lasts beyond his 4 years, that he's looking to build a movement, a revolutionary movement of change. Now, when was the last time the establishment? I mean, how many times did you see the French aristocracy line up on the side of the French revolutionaries? No, you didn't, because the revolutionary change that Trump is seeking isn't to supplant privileged elites. It's to change the underlying behavior beneath the privileged elites. And so, that's where we're looking at. We're looking at breaking the neck of the establishment, breaking the neck of this unelected bureaucracy, of changing the way America interfaces with the world, to move away from a military-industrial complex-driven war footing to this new concept of, economic competition, which from the Trump perspective means economic dominance, American economic dominance. And now we're talking the economy. And now you know why the billionaires are lining up with Donald Trump. I think that is he going to succeed? Here's another thing for all the haters and doubters out there. What's in your bank account? Because I'm going to tell you, the guys that make billions, whose decisions, are cause shifts of billions of dollars, even collectively trillions of dollars, they're not fools. And they've decided that the future is MAGA. And for all the haters out there, just what's in your bank account? Because we know what's in a lot of Team Woke's bank account: stolen goods. Stolen people who, the Nancy Pelosi get rich quick scheme in Congress. Come in, insider trading, That's it. But they don't build anything. They don't build anything. Make fun of Gates all you want. Microsoft. Hell, I'm staring at Microsoft right now. And most of the people watching this podcast are staring at some form of Microsoft. Apple. They build things. They have factories, jobs, infrastructure. This isn't running into Congress and getting Nancy Pelosi's broker to tell you what the stock picks are so that they can pass legislation that furthers this for short-term gain. They're not gaming the system. They are the system. The billionaires are the system, and the system saying no to Team Woke. So I think this is something, again, it doesn't matter whether you agree with Trump or not. At least be sound of mind when it comes to analysis, and understand that the people whose very well-being is linked to the political establishment have turned their back on Team Woke and the direction America was going prior to this, and they've picked something new. That means that this revolution has some staying power, and that would be my observation on that.
Let me throw something else at you and get your thoughts on this. I've been thinking about this business about Trump, whether or not his people will be allowed to go after some factions of the deep state. We don't know yet. He said he will. We will see, right? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, he is. I thought to myself, well, that doesn't make sense. So it's got to make sense. Here's the thought, Scott. They're now aligned with Trump. The billionaires are like, okay, look, the train has left the station. MAGA's pissed. And then they looked and they saw, well, wait the hell, we got Latinos voting with MAGA. We got Black people voting with MAGA. We got young people voting. Everybody's getting on the train. When they see everybody getting on the train, they're going to hop on that train. You know what I mean? They're going to be like, okay, this is the direction things are going. Clearly, this is we need to get on this thing and grab the wheel. Okay. The FBI, intelligence, etc., right? They went after the Black Panthers or Martin Luther King, or they went after the anti-war hippies. They went after people that the state didn't like. They're allowed to go after them. You ain't allowed to go after us. You know what I mean? You're allowed to take the hippies out, take Martin Luther King out, take any of them out. Take out the people your job is to keep these people in control. Don't come after us. You come after us, you're going wrong. And I think in a way, they're looking at it saying, they're coming after us. Trump's now, if they're aligned with him, you don't come after us. We're going to have to control this dog that's trying to bite us. We want a guard dog for the ruling elite. We don't want a mad dog that's going to bite us. What do you think about the idea that this concept, in my thought, if they do, we don't know, if they allow the Trump people to go after the deep state, it's because they see them as a threat to themselves and they want to neuter. They ain't trying to save us from the deep state, but they're like, these people are a problem. They got to be spayed and neutered. Your thoughts?
Well, here's the thing. Let's talk about the weaponization of the FBI and the Justice Department. As you said, it was used against Martin Luther King. It was used against me. It was used against anybody who dared stick their head up and challenge the official narrative. And we know, again, the billionaires lined up with the state on this. The FBI wasn't coming after, YouTube. The FBI wasn't, they weren't directly coming after him, but there was the threat, the potential that if you didn't play the game, they're coming. Why do you think Mark Zuckerberg, allowed the FBI to, in the Biden White House, to dictate the terms of his business model? Why do you think Dorsey at Twitter caved in when the FBI said, shut down these accounts? They became compliant tools of the system. The one guy that said no was Elon Musk. And if you remember, Elon Musk did an interview with Tucker Carlson. And Tucker Carlson said, what happens if Trump doesn't win? And Elon Musk said, I'm going to jail.
Before he said they were trying to kill him. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Elon Musk said they're trying to kill me.
So, the fact of the matter is, and here's the other thing, there's an interesting show out. I like it just because I'm involved in energy security and in terms of doing analytical work, called Landman. I don't know if you've seen it, Billy Bob Thornton.
No.
It's not oil. But at the beginning, he's held hostage by drug cartel, and they're threatening to kill him. And he said, "You go ahead and kill me, but let me tell you what's going to happen." And he starts going through the economics of oil, about how much oil is under the ground, the billions, the trillions. And he said, "Here's what's going to happen: you're going to kill me, then Halliburton is going to unleash investigators, and they're going to find you." And then they're going to hire triple canopies, going to hunt you down and kill you. And they're going to, because, they're going to spend hundreds of millions to kill you because you're costing them hundreds of billions. And you don't have that kind of money. You don't have that kind of money. So understand this. Again, I love reading your comments. Guys, shut up. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but don't tell me what you think I know about anything, because you have no idea what I know. And if you did know what I know, then you just shut up. Okay, I know about money and I know about power. I know that billionaires don't get billionaires because they're stupid. You can sit there and say that Gates' background is fake and artificial. I don't care. What I do know is this bank account has many more zeros in it than yours and mine combined. In fact, is everybody in the chat can add up all their money, and that won't even get to the first, the first big shift in numbers there. So this man has money. You know what you do with money? You hire people to do research for you. You hire muscle. You make governments change their position because you can actually bring to bear more power and influence through what you finance than many of the governments in the world can do. And you have access to secrets. You have access to muscle, just like the oil companies. They don't mess around, guys. And Gates doesn't mess around. And neither does anybody who has billions of dollars. They didn't get where they are because it was luck. They got where they are because they leveraged power and privilege and money. And so this means that nothing that's happening right now is taking any of these people by surprise. I can guarantee you that Bill Gates has received briefings from former CIA, former FBI, former DOJ. When I say former, I'm talking about last frickin' month former, as in they know what's going on, finger on the pulse. All right, that's the reality. They went from their $75,000, well, I guess they're maybe $120,000 a year job to pulling down $120,000 a month advising this guy. And their job is to be able to pick up the phone call and call the person that's sitting in the seat that they formerly sat in last month and say, what the hell's going on? What's the update, etc. So this is called, they have informed opinions. So when they make this shift, it's not because of a gut feeling or anything of that nature. It's as real as it gets. This is a massive power transition that's taking place. A massive power transition that affects everything that you just said. The demographics. If Donald Trump's the most hated man in the world, then why are the Latinos jumping ship? If Donald Trump's the most racist man in the world, then why are blacks jumping ship? If Donald Trump is the most ignorant man in the world, why are college-educated whites jumping ship? Because it's the economy, stupid. Okay, it's as simple as that. James Carville got it right in 1992. That holds through to today. Trump is about the economy, and now we come back to the billionaires. The billionaires remain billionaires if they are plugged into the economy. Team woke failed. It's over. It's done from the financial standpoint. Once the money leaves Team woke, they'll wither on the vine. Unfortunately, we have Citizens United, the Supreme Court decision that says that corporations are people when it comes to free speech, and money is free speech. And so the people that write the checks, and I'm not sitting here saying I like this. I say it's class war, Scott. I don't give a damn what you call it. You can call it class war. You can call it whatever you want. You can denigrate that. I'm talking about reality. You want a reality check? This is the reality check. The reality check is that America is going through what I believe to be a necessary transition because Team Woke that was in charge was taking us straight to hell, foreign policy-wise, economic policy-wise, and in terms of who we are as a nation. I'm not lining up with the extreme, some would say hate-filled rhetoric of the MAGA movement. I have homosexual friends and I have transgendered friends, and I am not happy about what society is getting ready to do to them. But I will say this, that you can't sink society on the exaggerated impact that you can't take transgenders, who are a very minor part of our society from a percentage standpoint, and redefine society based upon that. Can't do it. Society's not going to play that game. And the woke Team Woke tried to do that, and there's now a pushback. It's something anybody who is pro-transgender, and what I mean by pro-transgender, saying they have the same rights I have. I said all along, if you keep this up, there will be a backlash, and there ain't enough of you to fight back. And America's not going to follow you down this path. We're not going to go to war so that you can go to the toilet of your choice. It just isn't going to happen. We're not going to go to war so that you can compete in women's sports. That just isn't going to happen. That's the reality of where we are right now. But I do understand there are negative consequences to a lot of what Trump's trying to do. I will fight back as needed. I'm a big believer in the Constitution. You can't, I don't believe you can redefine birthright citizenship. I just don't see the Supreme Court going with that, but you never know. I mean, because a key aspect of the 14th Amendment is subject to the jurisdiction of. The Supreme Court has shown a proclivity lately to re-engage on presidential issues and redefine it. So maybe they'll come up with a creative concept of what jurisdiction of means. We'll see, but I'd like to believe the Supreme Court will stick to the Constitution as the founders, and when I'm not talking about the founding fathers, but remember the 14th Amendment came later in the 1860s. The people that wrote that 14th Amendment, what did they want to accomplish? What did they, what was their intent? That's what's supposed to be our original intent. So I will fight for this, but I understand. I'm looking at a situation. It's the same thing when I was a military intelligence officer. Did I want American Patriot missiles to shoot down Iraqi Scud missiles? You're damn right I did, especially when I was on the receiving end of Scud missiles. I wanted us to shoot down every single one of them. I wanted Delta Force to go in there and close with to destroy every Scud missile that was operating. I wanted the Air Force to bomb everything. I wanted all that to happen. But as an intelligence officer, I had to tell my boss, General Schwarzkopf, you ain't shooting down a single Scud, and we're not killing a single Scud on the ground. That's the truth. And this is why we're not doing it. That's the truth. It doesn't mean that I'm happy that the Iraqis are kicking our ass in this missile war. It just means that that's the truth about what's happening. And so when I report on my analysis of what's going on. It's not that I'm sitting here gleefully saying, oh, this, that, and the other thing. I'm just reporting what the facts are. Garland, you hit it on the head. There is a change in the demographics, the electoral demographics in the United States that the Democrats can't survive, because the Democrats, I call them team woke, were trying to divide and conquer. They were trying to get all of the people to identify based upon ethnicity and et cetera, and then use that to divide the country. And what Donald Trump is doing is trying to wipe away those divisions and unify people under a singular economic purpose. And people are starting to buy into that. And the billionaires are looking at that saying, yeah, that's the direction we're heading to. And where the billionaires jump, because you don't make billions of dollars going back and forth. You make billions of dollars by being consistent towards a course of action. And so for the billionaires to make this jump, they have to believe that it's again, in the oil business. The oil that's coming out of the ground now is derived from investments that were made 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So 50 years ago, somebody said, we're going to develop this region to gain access to that resource so that 50 years from now, it's coming out of the ground and plugging into the global economy. That's strategic thinking. That's why these people make hundreds of billions of dollars. The rest of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Our strategic thinking goes to the end of the month, and then we get a paycheck and we pay the bills and we go, do we have enough to change? None of us can afford to change strategic direction. Except my dogs, who decide to bark at this inopportune time.
Well, let me say this too. And I look at the chat every now and then. Oh, I can't believe what you're saying. The first rule of, if you get into self-defense or anything else, right? The first rule of conflict: never underestimate your adversary. When Scott says the billionaires are smart, people, they're evil. They can be evil, terrible, greedy. Most likely you don't get to be a billionaire unless you're evil and greedy and self-centered and all that. But that doesn't mean you're stupid. You know what I mean? If I say he's smart, okay, well, you love that guy then. No, that is an honest evaluation. And if I oppose something that he's doing, I must first acknowledge that he is a worthy adversary, as opposed to saying, just evaluate what I'm up against, first of all. Just because I say he's smart doesn't mean I think he's good or bad. It's not a moral evaluation. It's a practical evaluation. And I think that's what some people in the chat can't get, but I'm just going to make it clear.
When you're an NFL team, do you train to play the Pop Warner team, or do you train to play your NFL adversary?
Yeah, exactly. I'm a commander.
So you don't waste any time talking about Pop Warner.
Yep. I'm in the DC area, so I'm a Commanders fan, right? And people are like, oh, you're playing the Eagles in the NFC champ. You know what I say? They got more talent than we do. There's no question. We might beat them. We got to fight hard. We got a good young. That doesn't mean we can't win. But I'm not an Eagles fan because I look at them. I look at the defensive line. I look at their wide receivers, and I say, well, hell, they clearly have more talent, which means they should win. But it doesn't mean they're going to win, right? It doesn't mean so. To evaluate someone practically doesn't mean that. It means that you can't overlook their advantages. Money, what you brought up, they got a lot of money. They're smart people. Don't be fooled by that. And something I thought back, I'm going to throw this at you. When I saw all of the billionaires, the tech, not just the billionaires, specifically the tech billionaires, tell you something I remembered. This is during the Biden administration a year or so ago. Biden and his whole team they didn't really want to talk to President Xi. The tech billionaires invited him to San Francisco. They cleaned the city up, shuffled the homeless people away. That was pretty, to show how, they didn't help the homeless people. They just kind of hid them while he was there. Cleaned up the streets, ran out the red carpet. This guy comes and speaks, and they gave him a standing ovation. This is at a time when the Biden administration said, we're going to fight him. We're going to defend Taiwan. We're going to put in more missiles. And the tech billionaires were like, hey, Xi, bro, we didn't talk with you, my friend. Oh, standing. And I'm looking, I'm like, that runs so contrary. So now I look at, and I thought to myself, these people are making a lot of money. They need the Chinese. They need to sell stuff to 1.5 billion Chinese people. They got their they're making their stuff in China. They're saying you ain't going to get in the war and blow up my infrastructure that I'm making money from. I got billions invested, trillions invested in all this in China. If you think you can go blow that up in the war, buddy, you got something wrong. So I think back then something was cooking. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, the Biden administration and the neocons were on a path to war with China. And it was like an alternative power group, the tech billionaires, brought China in like, this ain't the direction we're going. I think something was cooking as early as back then. Your thoughts, Scott?
Again, you don't make $1 billion because you don't, being ignorant of the global economy, especially in the tech business. They understand the global market. They understand their ability to get the appropriate share of the global market. They understand who their competition is. And they also are looking forward into what future competition will be. Today we speak of, G5, G6, G7. I mean, hell, Biden wanted to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to get G4 connectivity in America, and we still haven't done it. Whereas the Chinese right now, they're up to G7, and they're well ahead of us in terms of stuff. AI, artificial intelligence. I think we look at it. It's funny in America. We say artificial intelligence. We say, well, ChatGPT or Grok or something like that. The Chinese are into long-term predictive analysis. They're running AI models that again, say what you want, but I'm all for TikTok. I don't use TikTok because I don't know how to dance. But if I knew how to dance, I could make $1 million on TikTok and all this stuff. But I think people should be allowed to express themselves the way they want, but understand that there is data collected, not the way that the United States believes the data is being collected to spy on individuals. The Chinese are taking a huge amount of data on trends, on how America thinks, what motivates America, what can generate excitement in America, what generates apathy in America, and they can build AI models on how to exploit this and guide this. We're not there. We're having, to us, AI is college kids cheating on their on writing their term papers. The military uses some AI. We try to incorporate AI into predictive analysis of the Russian military. But the thing is, initial AI isn't really intelligence. It's what I program it to be. AI only becomes artificial intelligence when it becomes self-aware. And what I mean by that is able to draw conclusions independent of the human interface. And so we called it AI guiding the Ukrainians to take on the Russians, but the Russians didn't respond the way the AI programmers thought they would. And then Russia got inside the AI loop, and it suddenly AI is not working. We don't do AI because to do AI, you have to have strategic thinking, and you have to have the ability to collect the right data in massive quantities over time. See, we want to game everything up front. We in the West, we're very impatient. So when we say, give me an AI solution, we want it now. But again, if I was to do an AI thing for you, Garland, I would be handing you something that's not artificial intelligence. I would be handing you something that I programmed to think a certain way. And then only after you collect the appropriate amount of data, what happens the way we do AI is that we have limited data sets, and then it discerns things to support the prejudices already programmed into the thinking. We're not trusting the system to think on its own. We're telling, so that's not artificial intelligence, that's guided predictive analysis. And this is why we're afraid. The Chinese do it 20 times better than us. And you know who knows this? The tech companies. They know that. And so in order for them to stay rich, they not only have to compete with these guys, but they have to tap into that talent. They have to tap into that technology. They have to tap into that market. And the policies of the Biden administration were not conducive to that. I think they're concerned about Trump. They don't want a trade war. This is why you see Trump saying all the right things up front. I think AI, I love people who are writing about AI. I don't know if they do AI, but that's all right. The Trump administration is talking about competition with China. That's what, and not just adversarial black versus white, good versus evil competition, but legitimate economic competition. But then to get there, he's talking about tariffs, taxes, sanctions. That's not competition. That's manipulating the system. That's the American approach to AI. We have to manipulate the system. Well, then it's not self-aware artificial intelligence. The tech companies want to have honest competition that they can go in and exploit to their benefit. And so they're going to pressure Trump in that direction. I think that's why like that old, what is it? Keep your enemies, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So Donald Trump is the enemy of these billionaires. They need to keep him close.
Well, that's at you too. And here's the difference. Why I think the neocons, look, history tells us that a particular ideological group will rise to ascendancy in power. And then when the people who don't like that particular ideological group may drop and another group ascends to power, the neocons ascended to power in the late 90s and early 2000s. I think the tech billionaire bros have said, you had your time and it's gone, and I think they're losing power. I'm going to read, some people may have already heard it. This is a book called Ally versus Ally. It was written by Tony Blinken, published in 1987. And I'm going to read a sentence from this that to me shows why these tech billionaires said, Blinken and your ilk got to get the hell out. Whether they're going to, I'm not saying they're going to do good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying there's a new sheriff in town, right? This is Tony Blinken. For a number of, they were unhappy. What were they unhappy with in this book? Ally versus Ally, America, Europe, and the Siberian pipeline crisis. They were unhappy because Europe was getting oil from, at that time, the Soviet Union at very cheap prices. And they weren't happy about it. Interesting. Tony Blinken should write a book about that. And we see what happened in Nord Stream. Let me read this to you, Scott, and everyone. For a number of influential policymakers, if you read the book, he was talking about himself, his group, right? For a number of influential policymakers, the time seemed opportune to engage the Soviet Union in a round of economic warfare, regardless of the price that might have to be paid by the economies of Western Europe and the American business community. Tony Blinken and his ilk said, look, we're all about geostrategic advantage. Screw the businesses. Who cares? They're just going to have to pay the price for our ideology. You see what they did to Germany. That's exactly what they did to Germany. Regardless of the price, we got to cut you off from Russian energy, right? And I think those American businesses that are paying the price, when you fight City Hall fights back, right? They said, we're going to do it. We're finally, Tony Blinken and said, we're finally in power. We're going to do all of these things. Is it going to hurt our businesses? Sure. And now these billionaires who own these businesses said, yeah, we're going to put an end to that. I think that's the mentality of screw the businesses. We got this ideology of hegemony and world power and all that kind of stuff. When the billionaires and businesses said, man, we're just trying to make all the money we can. We ain't going to die. We ain't going to get in war. And we're not going to cut this crap off. Sure, you did it to Germany. You ain't doing it to us. That's my thoughts, that people don't want to believe. Like, everybody's like, nothing's going to change. It's clearly obvious to me that things are changing. Some things aren't going to change, but the great power relationships are definitely changed. Not are they going to change, they are changing right in front of our eyes. I don't see how anybody can deny that, Scott.
No, you're right. I mean, George Orwell wrote that book 1984, and I think the world at that point in time was divided into three blocks that ended up fighting ones here, and then two would ally against one, and then when they got the advantage, they'd split and they'd do it just to maintain this global equilibrium. if you take a look at what direction the world's heading in right now, we've got Trump clearly is trying to make Fortress America. Clearly.
Yep. Yeah.
Acquisition of Greenland, the bullying of Canada and Mexico, the Panama Canal, and you're going to see he's going to be twisting the arm of every South American country. That is going to be America's fortress right there, economic fortress. Provides us with markets. It provides us with resources. It gives us the ability for cheap labor early on. I mean, so that's that. Right now, Russia and China are together, but strategically in the long term, you're probably looking at a Russian-European alignment and a Chinese-Asian alignment. The wild card is Africa, and I think Africa, unfortunately, is going to fall victim again to great power competition, where the legitimate aspirations of the African people will be subordinated to whatever political control is being put under. Right now, Russia and China have the upper hand, but
I'll throw something at you. I think Russia and China actually are building Africa as a new market for themselves. I think the benefits that Africa actually is going to kind of get benefits, because I think Russia and China are saying we need another market that we can sell stuff and build stuff. And you know what I mean? And I think they see Africa as a market. That's why the Chinese are building so much stuff. And what's happening if you talk to the Africans? They're buying lots of Chinese stuff. They're building their own market. And I think part of it was because they saw Europe and the neocons as saying, we're going to separate away from you. So they're like, well, we'll build our own market. We can sell stuff there. And it's a huge continent full of young people. Perfect. Anyway, go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
No, there's no doubt that Russia and China are doing that, but I don't think that Europe and the United States are going to yield the African market without a fight. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Africa isn't going to be able to have a moment of peace, tragically, because I think it's going to become the next battleground of superpowers, and that's not a good thing. But I do see an alignment right now. Russia and China have made common cause, but the reality is, if for Russia and China to maintain this relationship, what will happen is that Russia will just become the place where China acquires its natural resources, its oil, its energy, its raw materials, and Russia will just become sort of a colony of China, and that's not the direction Russia wants to go. And this is where Europe, I do think that once this war in Ukraine is finished, that Europe and Russia will repair their relationships. I think you'll see a healthier economic relationship develop that will give Russia the ability to compete more efficiently with China. I'm not talking about Russia and China going to war against each other, but here's my concern about Russia and China. The relationship between the two nations are defined in large by the relationship between the two leaders, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. They're actually friends. And that friendship overcomes a lot of residual resentment within each system. The Chinese don't necessarily trust the Russians, and the Russians don't necessarily trust me. I've been to Russia. They don't necessarily trust China, but it's a necessary.
Yeah, there's some historical enmity there.
Yeah, they're in mistrust and racism, whatever you want to, whatever you want to say.
Chinese sided with the U.S. during the Cold War against Russia,
and
they don't.
Russia's always concerned they're going to do it again.
They'll do it again. Yeah.
Yep. And so, what happens in 2035 when Vladimir Putin is no longer the leader of Russia, when Xi Jinping is no longer the leader of China, when new leaders come in and they're going to have to deal with systems? It's garbage day, and the garbage men are out there. Or garbage people. I got to be politically correct.
No, yeah, right.
I can't assume.
Or maybe not even anymore. Maybe we can call them garbage men again.
Garbage they.
Yeah, right.
But anyways, the people who do the important work of removing the waste from in front of my house, I'm not diminishing them at all. It's hard work, and they're out there doing it. I thank them for it. The fact is, Russia and China. China. I think Xi Jinping has the ability right now to build a system that's capable. He's trying to build a system that's capable of replacing him without shaking the system up. I had an interesting interaction with Dmitry Trenin. I know you know who he is.
Yep.
A man who has Vladimir Putin's ear, very influential thinker in Russia. And he and I agree that if Putin doesn't change the system so that when he steps aside, the system continues to behave exactly the same way it does with whoever takes in, Russia is going to go into a period of crisis, domestic political crisis. And anytime a nation goes into domestic political crisis of that nature, where they are redefining who they are, they become xenophobic. They sort of turn in on themselves. And that will be to the detriment, I believe, of Russian-Chinese relations. And so, right now it's a strategic relationship of convenience, of mutual convenience. They recognize the evil, the enemy that is America and the global, the world-based, rules-based international order. But eventually, I think you're going to see a realignment. Now, and I've said this too, and I'm writing something right now on this. My advice to Trump is you've got to start thinking strategically. That if you truly believe that you want to avoid a nuclear war with Russia, stop focusing only on the immediate. Start focusing on where we're going to be a decade from now. And people say, well, that's a long way away. Guys, the war that's being fought in Ukraine today was defined by a crisis that took place a decade ago in 2014. And it wasn't that long ago when you think about it. It just sort of like happened yesterday. In a blink of an eye, Vladimir Putin's going to be in his 80s and no longer viable as a leader. In a blink of an eye. Russia, when they go xenophobic, as they will if they don't develop these systems. And remember, it's the United States that prevented Russia from developing democratic institutions. How do I know? Gosh, the Charge d'Affaires, Mr. Mary, back in 1994, wrote a memorandum, the modern version of the long telegram, that condemned the Clinton administration for what it was doing in Russia, supporting Yeltsin blindly to the detriment of democratic institutions, democratic society. Most Americans may not remember that in October 1993, Yeltsin put tanks in the streets, they fired on the parliament, and Yeltsin assassinated, murdered, ran over, destroyed the parliament of Russia. So much for democracy. And then we backed Yeltsin blindly for the next 6 years, buying an election in 1996 to keep him in power. And in doing so, we destroyed democratic institutions. It wasn't Vladimir Putin that destroyed democratic institutions. It was the United States of America. Putin inherited a fundamentally broken Russia when he tried to reform Russia to create the conditions in which there could be legitimate political opposition formed. Putin had always said in the early years, I am in favor of political opposition because it makes us stronger. It's good to have pushback. But every time he tried to build a legitimate political opposition, the CIA came in and undermined it by taking it over, not to help Russia build democracy, but to take down Vladimir Putin. So Putin has put the quash on it. Today, Russia is a de facto single-party state, United Russia. And you're not allowed to be in opposition to it, or you can't be because there's no money. The Yanks to the rescue. There it is. We stole the 1996 election. But the point is, Putin today doesn't have an institution. They did constitutional changes a couple of elections ago that went to 6-year presidency, reformed things, etc. That could have been, and at the time I wrote, I said that's necessary domestic political reform to create the conditions for a smooth transfer of power 2 elections from now. But he hasn't had the chance to do anything because of this stupid war. So the president does need to bring an end to this war and create an opportunity over the course of the next decade for Russia to build a system capable of transferring power smoothly from Vladimir Putin to whatever replaces Vladimir Putin without us trying to influence that. It's in our interest for stability to ensure that Russia remains stable. And I just don't think we're thinking like that. I'm very concerned that we lack any strategic vision right now, that everything's being done for the moment. But, getting back to the billionaires, they have strategic vision. They are thinking down the road. And hopefully it's not just these tech billionaires, but I think the energy billionaires are starting to realize that this is about 10 years ago-ish. I was in, I write for an organization called Energy Intelligence, and I'm on their advisory board. And so there are annual meetings, and we used to do it in person before the pandemic. I think they are doing it in person again. No, we do it remote. But I used to go to these meetings, and I respect everybody there. But these American oilmen would come in, And I'd be talking about geopolitical change and trend, and they say, wrong. We have all the money. The money means everything. We're talking about Iraq. We will go into Iraq and we will put the money in Iraq and the money will change things. Money makes its own reality and all that stuff. And I said, there's a bunch of guys in there that have RPGs and AK-47s that don't give a damn about your money. And they're going to kill you. And I remember I was invited by ConocoPhillips to come in and talk about their future joint cooperation they were going to do in Iraq. And I turned to the CEO. They had already built the division. They have the new, the president of this division that's going to go into Iraq and all of his staff. And these are guys that are making big bucks and everything. And I turned to the CEO and I said, I just have a question for you to start. Are you a security company that dabbles in the oil business? Or are you an oil company that has a security division? Because this is the important question. He said, well, we're an oil company that has a security division. I said, then don't go into Iraq because you're going into a war zone. You're going into some, you need to be a security company that dabbles in the oil business. And if that's not how you've organized this, you're setting yourself up for failure. By the end of that meeting, ConocoPhillips put a pause on it. Eventually, ConocoPhillips withdrew from that because that was the reality of it. And today, what the oil men are realizing is that the ability of the United States to come in and just throw money at a problem, the United States through its multinational oil companies throw money at a problem, is over because oil is diversified. And there are other entities out there that can do oil on the same scope and scale that we can. So then now you get into different factors such as what are the underlying policies of the governments that are behind the money and all this stuff. And this is where China has a competitive advantage because they don't bring strings. Unfortunately for the oil companies, we bring strings. LGBTQ. What Trump just did is say we're done with that. That will save American foreign policy. You know why we lost Georgia, the Republic of Georgia? We lost the Republic of Georgia because USAID spent tens of millions of dollars a year to bring LGBTQ policies in at the grassroots level to redefine Georgian civil society, to reshape Georgian politics, to remove that government so that we could go to war. They could get Georgia to go to war with Ukraine. Now, let's say that you believe that there needed to be a second front. You sabotaged yourself by trying to tell conservative Georgia that they had to empower LGBTQ members of society. And that was the end of it. That's why Georgia Dream is dominant today. If we're going to compete in the global ideological marketplace, Team Woke can't be allowed to say the most important thing for American foreign policy today is what your LGBTQ policies are. That's the least important thing of American policy, the least important thing. I see there's a change taking place in the way the world, the way America is going to be interfacing with the world. And I think these billionaires sense that change.
Let me throw this one more thing at you. We'll get back to we'll get into the Trump, Russia, Ukraine stuff. This is my belief that I've learned. I don't pay a damn any bit of attention to what Donald Trump says, only to suspect that he'll probably do the opposite. Trump says, "Oh, Hamas they better come around, or they're all hell's going to break. Oh, they'll all be killed." And everybody goes, "Oh my God, Donald Trump's going to 10 times worse." And he calls the Israelis, says, "Knock it off." Kind of the opposite. But if you listen to what Donald Trump, he also said, nobody's going to be happy. In other words, he always goes to the extremes, right? And everybody freaks out. Did you hear Donald Trump said that Hamas better let him go? They better be gone before, or he's going to die. Donald Trump, and he goes these extreme over the top, right? So recently he says, Russia better fill in the blank. He always loves to do this. Russia better do what I said, or else I'll turn up the volume on them 1,000,000 times, and I'll sanction, and I'll do this, and I'll do that, right? Remember this. Well, I'm going to get 100% tariffs on China. And all of these economists started jumping around. Oh my God, 100% tariffs. That'll wipe out our economy overnight, which it would. And I'm like, well, that means Donald Trump ain't going to do it. Come on, guys. He's saying he might as well set 1,000,000% tariffs. He ain't going to do it. That is something to keep you busy. And he always starts at an extreme. Now, Unfortunately for him, other people on the other side listen to him and they think he really means it. So here's my point. So Donald Trump saying, I listen to what he's been saying all along. He despises Zelensky. Despises him. His people are tweeting. His son, no more money for you, Zelensky. We're sick and tired of you begging. They hate. And I'm listening to all these things and thinking, boy, his team really hates Zelensky and they want the hell out of this thing, right? So when Donald Trump comes out and says, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Either the Russians do what we say, or we'll sanction them, we'll take them out, we'll do. And I'm thinking to myself, meanwhile, everybody kind of jumps up and down. Oh my God, did you hear what Trump said? And I'm just like, don't keep buying it. You know what I mean? And now it's not good for him to do that. But I've come to the conclusion that Donald Trump's full of crap, that he's an entertainer. He understands how to work a crowd. And more often than not, he's working a crowd. And particularly when he makes extreme rhetoric, particularly then, that ain't what he means. And that ain't what he's going to do. And he's playing a game with people. That's you're not going to tell me all the things that I've read, the op-eds, the people that talk to Trump, the tweets, and all the stuff that I've seen. And suddenly he thinks he can. And Trump saying it's ridiculous. Why are we sanctioning them? It's destroying our economy, blah, blah, blah. You can't defeat the Russian machine. And suddenly he forgot it. No, this is Trump's The Art of the Deal and the other whatever deal. You know what I mean? The game, you read this stuff and he says, never forget those who betrayed you. You can remember Marco Rubio better remember that because he's getting fired quickly. He's be the first one fired is going to be Rubio. I guarantee you that. At any rate, your thoughts on my dismissal of Donald Trump's extreme rhetoric? Because every damn time he does it, he keeps people dancing and then he goes out and does the opposite while you're trying to figure out what the hell he meant. Oh, why did he say that, Scott?
Well, Trump leaves clues. It's like, when following the path of people that are dropping crumbs. You watch Lord of the Rings, and they drop this, they drop that so that, the ranger, whatever his name was, could follow it and track them, and the elf could follow them and track them. Trump leaves clues. Let's look at some of the clues that he's left. First of all, let's look at the behavior of Marco Rubio. Everybody want to have a really fun thing, go back a year ago, 2 years ago, and just listen to Marco Rubio when he was Senator Marco Rubio. And the things he said about Ukraine, the things he said about Israel, Hamas, foreign policy, the things he said about Donald Trump. There's a reason why Donald Trump called him Little Marco, because they didn't get along at all. Then you go to his confirmation hearing and listen to what he said. That's not the same guy. Marco Rubio has been reprogrammed. And it's interesting, he knows he's been reprogrammed because when he was asked questions after his confirmation, he said, I work at the behest of the president. I will implement the president's policies. And then he said, and there are just certain issues that I'm not going to be involved in. The Secretary of State said there are certain issues, foreign policy issues, that I'm simply not going to be involved in. Other people are going to be doing that. All right, clue one. The Secretary of State is not making foreign policy for the United States of America. At a minimum, he's implementing it. And for the most part, he's just going to come back and rubber stamp whatever Donald Trump wants. On Russia, Trump has said some important things. One, the foundational policy position of the United States going into this was never about NATO expansion. The fact is, I was banned from Twitter and YouTube for saying that this was about NATO expansion. I'm on the Ukrainian hit list to be killed because I said this is about NATO expansion. They picked that out as one of the top reasons why they want to kill me. Because, my God, it can't be about NATO expansion, can it? Well, Trump has come out and said it's about NATO expansion. That the whole conflict came up because of the expansion of NATO. So that's a foundational philosophy. Two, when he reposts Jeffrey Sachs talking about Israel, that means that he has been exposed to the thinking of Jeffrey Sachs. Go listen to, now we can all go back, as I have done, been very critical of Jeffrey Sachs when he was an advisor to Boris Yeltsin in the 1990s. And a lot of the economic problems that Russia faces today are because of the advice provided by Jeffrey Sachs. He can spin it any way he wants to today. That's just the truth. Today, he is, I think, one of the more logical, fact-based analysts of the Russian economic reality, of Russian geopolitical reality out there. Donald Trump is exposed to that thinking as well. So he's cognizant of this. Trump recognizes that the problem is Ukraine. He has said that, Russia's going to get those territories. Russia's going to get the Crimea. It's not, that's not, we're not going back. My point is, I agree with you that Donald Trump has a strategic understanding that at least touches on the realities of the situation that allow, therefore, for Trump to realistically go forward. Now, here's where it gets complicated, because now we're reading tea leaves. Trump has some advisors, Keith Kellogg first and foremost, who are just idiotic when it comes to Russia. They're moronic, stupid. Again, we talked about this in the past. Donald Trump, how do you evaluate his way of doing business? If I were a criminologist and he was a Russian, what would be my foundational research vehicle into the thinking of Donald Trump? And the answer is The Apprentice. The Apprentice was Donald Trump's show, and it sort of showed his corporate model of competition and team building and all that stuff. And it basically pits people against each other. And he lets people have the chance to run with something and commit to something, then he tears them apart. There's a chance that he picked Keith Kellogg, not because he agrees with anything that Keith Kellogg's saying, but he wants Keith Kellogg to be out there throwing stuff out there, because everything Keith Kellogg says is fundamentally opposed to the foundational realities that we know Trump embraces. If you ask Keith Kellogg, is NATO expansion behind this conflict? He'll say no. It's the aggressive, ambition of Vladimir Putin. Two totally different concepts. One is held by the president. The other one's held by Keith Kellogg. The president is repeating a lot, incorporating a lot of what Keith Kellogg tells him. And again, Trump, I guess he can be stupid, but to me, a clue is when he said 60 million Russians died in World War II. 27 million died. It's a big number. But why 60? Why throw out a deliberately falsified number? Is it a signal? Is it a crumb? Is it a hint that I'm just being exaggerating here? I'm just throwing stuff out there to stir up the pot? I don't know. He has a Secretary of Treasury, that he's nominated, who says that the Russian economy is vulnerable, that the United States has that there are some things we could do in sanctioning to bring down the Russian economy. But Jeffrey Sachs will say the opposite, that the Russians have actually sanction-proofed themselves and have anticipated anything that we can do. They know the market that they're involved in much better than we are, and BRICS isn't going to roll over and play dead because Donald Trump decides he's going to tariff India and China over purchasing of Russian energy. And so we see Trump, bless him, peace through strength is his thing. Peace through strength. But he has to look to be strong. If Trump came rolling in saying, yep, NATO expansion caused the conflict, we're going to dump Ukraine and we're going to move in, he'll be told that he rolled over for Putin.
Yeah. He's got to have some leverage, even if the leverage is to appear that he doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's got to have something, because he knows he doesn't really have any leverage.
He has no leverage.
He has to at least create an element where it appears like he has some leverage, because he knows. I think he knows.
That's what he's done. We could do it the hard way. We can either make a deal or we can do it the hard way. I'm finishing up an article called The Hard Way, and I'm going to try and explain to Trump why that is stupid. But here's the thing. He went from the perfect phone call solving the war, which we all knew wasn't going to happen. And now he's given Keith Kellogg 100 days. 100 days to put it to get to the deal. At the same time that he's starting to, ratchet down support. And I don't know, there's a lot of rumors out there about, first of all, I don't think this executive order that he signed halting foreign aid impacts of money's already allocated for Ukraine. But there's talk that he has already choked off the bureaucracy necessary. He hasn't cut the aid, yes, but that he's throttled down the bureaucracy. I don't know if that's true or not. If it's true, Ukraine's screwed.
Right. You heard that he fired. My understanding is he fired the people in the Pentagon that are responsible for transferring the aid and getting the aid there. Therefore,
I think he fired the civilians.
But not the
military people. But the military
people,
that's what I mean.
Which yanks, but You got to get it there. If well, anyway, go ahead.
No, it's the same thing when I was doing arms control in the Soviet Union. At the end of the day, policy was made by political appointees at the Department of Defense. And even my General LaJoy, had to go to these policy makers to get the guidance necessary to implement the treaty. And if you fired if one day we woke up at the on-site inspection agency and all of the political appointees were fired, we're paralyzed.
Right.
We're like, well, because the military implements. The civilians conceive, and if the conceivers are gone, the implementers have nothing to implement. So by doing this, Trump has in effect frozen American aid to Ukraine for the next 100 days. I think it's deliberate. So now you have 100 days where you have no aid going in. Trump has also told the Europeans, NATO, you got to step up. And you got to step up with 5%. That's a number that NATO's never going to make.
They don't have.
They'll never make it. It's a number that'll break them. And he says, we're not going to underwrite you. If you want to do this, you have to step up. NATO can't step up. So they're setting NATO up for failure. They're setting the European Union up for failure. And he's sending a signal to Vladimir Putin. You got 100 days. Okay, I'm doing everything I can to throttle things down and to complicate things and all that. You got 100 days. And in 100 days, I got to come to you. And we got now in between that 100 days, there's going to be a meeting. I believe it's a phone call. I don't think they're going to physically meet yet. They might physically meet at the 100-day point, but there will be a phone call. And this is going to be one of the most important phone calls that Donald Trump makes, because this phone call is his opportunity to define the stage with Vladimir Putin, to tell Putin what the United States wants, for Putin to tell the United States what Russia wants, and for them to have a joining of the minds on this issue. But Trump knows that this war doesn't end unless it's on terms that are 100% agreeable to Russia. This means no NATO members, no European troops on Ukrainian soil. Zelensky is gone. Zelensky knows this. He started to come out with details from the Istanbul communique. And one of the important details of the Istanbul communique is that Zelensky had to resign. And he was going to be replaced by this ethnic Russian or Russian-speaking politician that Zelensky arrested and beat up. I can't Mendychik or something of that nature. I'm butchering the name. But Russia said, no, he's going to be, that's the future leader. Right now, I know this to be a case. There's a Ukrainian government in exile in Russia right now that's ready to take over. And Zelensky knows this. Did you see Zelensky at Davos in his I mean, have you seen the movie Goodfellas?
Yes, I love one of my favorites.
You remember at the end where Ray Liotta is just insane and he's snorting cocaine. He's and his eyes are just this, and he's looking up at the sky and he's paranoid. And his whole that was Zelensky. Zelensky, look at his eyes. The man is higher than a kite. He's got the sniffles, and he's just paranoid, and he's all over the place. He's Ray Liotta at the end of Goodfellas, and that's for Zelensky. It's over. It's finished, and he knows it. He knows it's over. 200,000. He wants 200,000 troops. You do understand. I mean, everybody should understand that 200,000 isn't 200,000. It's 600,000, but it's actually closer to 1 million. Why? One, you need a permanent logistical infrastructure that's going to have to be imposed on Ukraine to sustain 200,000. NATO simply doesn't have that infrastructure, but that's a 80,000 person infrastructure. To rotate 200,000 troops in means you need 600,000. The 200,000 are there. The 200,000 are training to go in 6 months, and the 200,000 that are on standby, resting, because when the guys come out, they're not going to go back into training. They're going to go into a 6-month R&R period where the reduced tempo, meet your families and all this stuff. And then they go into a train up, and then they go into deployment. 600,000. NATO doesn't have 600,000 troops to standing by to be used this way. This man is so far removed from him. Even if you said 60,000, NATO doesn't have 60,000 troops to do that way, because that's 180,000. And it's still going to require a 50,000 strong logistical base to put in. So that's 230,000. NATO it fantasized about creating a 300,000 rapid deployment force. This is stuff that NATO can't afford. And NATO can't meet its 2% GDP requirement. Trump's saying 5%, but the reality is to do this stuff, NATO needs to go to 10 to 15%, and it's unaffordable. So Trump has set NATO up for failure. And I think Europe during this 100 days is going to come face to face with that reality. And I think we're going to see some changes taking place in the mindset of Europe toward Ukraine, alterations of strategic vision. And ultimately, what Putin is going to tell Russia is it's not about Ukraine. Never was about Ukraine. It's about the strategic relationship Russia has with Europe and the United States. And it's about a new European security framework that's based upon a treaty. Lavrov just gave a statement. He said this has to be treaty-based, everything in writing, with irrevocable guarantees that when you commit to this, it's there. The next president doesn't come in and change it. Russia will only commit to something that's that. If they don't have it in writing and solid and all this stuff, Russia will just continue the special military operation. It's a war of attrition that Russia's winning. The algorithm is stacked in Russia's favor, and there's nothing Trump or anybody can do to change that algorithm.
And I'll say this, that 100 days, right? Here's what first thing I think about the 100 days. Within that period of time, Germany's going to have an election. So there will be some instability in Germany. The other thing is this, it's kind of like a torture session, where the bad guys got some poor captive guy and they're trying to question him and the guy won't talk. And he walks out of the room and he, tells the guys, soften him up, punch him for a while. And then I'll come back and we'll see if he talks. He walks out of the room. They beat him. They put a phone book on his head, smack him on the head a couple times, yank on him, pour some hot water on him. And they say, he comes back. Okay, you ready to talk yet? Right. Oh, you're not ready to talk, Zelensky? Yeah, we'll leave you to the Russians for 100 days. We'll come back in 100 days when you've been softened up on the front. The front lines are crumbling. So we'll come back. You can look at the front line in 100 days. Maybe you'll be ready to talk then. I think that's part of it.
Reminds me of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Have you seen that?
No, I might have. Which one? Which one?
Well, it's just a scene where they have a guy and they're trying to soften him up, and they turn to the person and say, "All right, work this guy over." He comes and goes, boom, and kills him. They're like, we can't, why'd you kill him? That's leaving Ukraine to the Russians is the equivalent. There's not going to be any phone book over the head. It's going to be boom, and that's it. And that's where Zelensky is right now, because these next 100 days, you're going to be looking at 100,000 Ukrainian dead, because this situation on the front is just, it's not going well for Ukraine.
So somewhere in that 100 days, rather than wait the 100 days, Zelensky will be calling Trump saying, we can't make it to 100 days, dude. We need a deal. Bottom line is this. I think there's some strategy to it. Last thing I think we need to touch on is the conflict in the Middle East. Couple of things I'll throw at you. Interesting, the Russians signed this deal with the Iranians, but part of the deal is that the Russians are going to be building nuclear power plants and providing nuclear material and all that stuff. And I thought, yeah, but the Iranians can provide their own nuclear material. Here's what I thought. They're setting things up for another nuclear to get back in the JCPO. They do that. The Russians say, we're building nuclear power plant. Number one, we're going to harden them. We're going to give them S-400s, 500, whatever the hell. We're going to give them lots of stuff to defensive, to make it harder to attack them, to deter any attacks on them. Then we get in, the Russians will, it's in there. They're going to build nuclear power plants. The Russians get involved in the nuclear program and then say, we can guarantee you, we've got a strategic alliance. We're developing things for them. Things are looking good for them. We can guarantee you that they won't build a, which that's part of their deal. Trump's in there, right? So now what you have is an Iran that the Russians can say, I don't care if you trust them or not, we'll be the guarantors here, and we'll show you what we're going to do, and we'll be in, and blah blah blah. You get a new JCPOA, and to be quite frank, I think Trump always wanted another deal. So if the Russians are good with Trump,
when he withdrew from the first time, he said, "I'm doing this to get a better deal. This is a bad deal. I'm looking for a better deal."
And I think Putin feels maybe that, hey, I can talk with Trump. We can get a deal. We can all work. Trump, you look good. Everybody, there's no war in our strategic partner, which Iran is an incredibly important strategic partner because of their geographical location, amongst other things, historical. So I think that's a setup. The Saudis, I think they scared to be Jesus out of the Saudis when they were like, hey, we're going to attack Iran. And the Iranians were like, oh, yeah, well, we'll blow up all of the Saudis' oil infrastructure. We'll fix you. I think the Saudis were like, whoa, we ain't going to have any. Anyway, what do you think about my thoughts that there's a move afoot for a new JCPOA? Saudi, they're involved.
I said this months ago, that Iran, that the new Iranian president is not looking for a conflict with Israel.
Right.
That it's never been in Iran's interest to have a conflict with Israel. Iran is looking to alleviate the economic situation for the Iranian people, and that's done by economic engagement and retaining their energy-based economy as being viable. You go to war against Israel, Iran can destroy Saudis, but that means that Iran's being destroyed, and that destroys everything. Bring down the nuclear program. I think the Iranians leveraged it for as long as they could. But at the end of the day, the world will not tolerate a nuclear armed Iran. It will be the destruction of Iran if they choose nuclear weapons. And the Iranians just don't want to do that. They want to be economically engaged. So I think you're 100% correct on the January 17th strategic new strategic arrangement. The Russians are stepping in, as the Russians have always offered to do, and said, we can build these nuclear. Remember, Russia took over from Siemens and built the Bandar Abbas plant, and Russia can do this. And when they do that, now whether Iran retains some sort of residual enrichment capability to produce fuel for these, or if Iran just gives it all up and lets the Russians do it, the fact is we're looking at a new reality in the Middle East that's not defined by Iran's nuclear program. I think we're going to be seeing a new nuclear deal. And it's going to be one that is not linked to an American policy of seeking to undermine and overthrow the theocracy, which has been the cornerstone of American policy ever since the first militants went over the wall at the embassy back in 1979, 1980. So, that's the direction. Unfortunately, I got to run. I got a sick dog and got a vet.
All righty, man. All right. Thanks a lot, Scott. Everybody, ScottRitter.com. Go ahead and hop off, Scott, and I'll finish this out.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott Ritter. All right. That was very productive. Well, keep in mind, it's funny to me when I read the chat, because a lot of what Scott and I do, and a lot of what I do is brainstorming. We're brainstorming. We're trying to figure things out. People get upset in the chat. You guys are delusional. You're madmen. You're crazy. I'm not saying this is the way. This is definite. We're trying to read the tea leaves. It looks like this may go in that direction. That may go in. I think this. I think that. This is a lot of brainstorming. And who the hell knows? And guess what? Next week, Scott and I will sit down. We'll look at the tea leaves again. And we'll try to, as best we can, figure the direction based on the facts on the ground. Clearly, to me, there is a cabal, whatever you want to call it, a segment, a faction of the ruling elite, the tech bros, I call them, the super tech billionaires. I just think they've taken power, and they are aligned with Trump, or Trump works for them, however you choose to put it, and that there's a new direction, and I understand. If you've been thinking in a particular way for a particular long amount of time, it's hard to say things are different. I'm not saying Trump's good. I'm not saying they're good. I'm simply saying things are changing, and I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Scott's trying to figure out what's going on, and we can't jump and dance. The first 4 years of Trump, everybody danced at every tweet he made, and Trump loved it. He'd make an extreme tweet, and everybody would go, oh my God, did you see what Trump said, right? Don't do that this go around. Turn the volume down on it a little bit. When Trump says, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, don't go, oh my God, did you see what Trump said? He has no clue about the Russians. He wants to go to war with Russia. Don't get caught in, I'm going to jump around like a rag doll dancing every time Trump makes the latest extreme statement. That's why he does it. To keep you dancing, to keep you jumping up and down. Chill out. Look at what he does, look at what people are doing, and try to figure it out. Look at some history, try to figure out what the tech bros, who I think are really in the alliance of power now, what benefits them? because they all listen to the radio station that I say we all should listen to, WIIF, What's in it for me. And I think the tech bros now have got their hands on the grip of power, and they're going to act in a way that benefits them. I think they have figured out war ain't going to help us. And I think they're, for now, I'll put it like this: war with Russia and China, great power conflict. I don't think they won. Now, I would argue this: it's going to be a pain in the ass for Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, anybody in the Western Hemisphere, Canada, Greenland, you name it, right? They're going to have to deal with a new imperialism that says we're going to control everything in our region. And that's going to be a new fight that all of us are going to have to stand up against. It's a different fight. I think it's a new fight, and I think that's the fight we're up against now, and we need to get a grip on that, and figure out how we're going to address it in defense of the people in the region who are going to now have to deal with the imperialist iron fist coming down on them. But you can't deny it and you can't get stuck in a mindset that says when political dynamics change, I can't change the way I view things. I think that's a mistake. So, by the way, we got Mark Sloboda coming on at noon, but I'm going to look and see if we've got any super chats. Don't forget, everybody, we do have a join button that you can click on. It's like $4.99 a month, and I'm going to looking for super chats. How about if I click on this? Will this give me my as best I can? All right, I'm going to start looking for super chats. Let's start with the Sparkster. We got a few minutes, and Sloboda comes on at noon, and 37 minutes. Okay. In case it makes you feel safer, Pete Hegseth is a protege of Lindsey Graham. Graham introduced Hegseth to the media and a member of AstroTurf Veterans for Wartime group around 2010. So I'll say this: I pay zero attention to Trump's cabinet when it comes to determining what he's going to do. I understand traditional politics are cabinet-driven policies, that you could look at a cabinet and you could determine what a president was going to do based on who that president brought in his cabinet. I don't, but well, let me put it to you like this. That wasn't the case for the first Trump go around. He fired half of those bastards every 6 months. He was firing half of them. I don't think Trump is a traditional politician, and I don't think you can look at who he put in his cabinet and from that determine what he's going to do, like we have been able in the past. I just think it's a mistake. I could be wrong. We will see. If you looked at his cabinet, you would have said there's no way he's going to call BB and stop the Gaza attack. But he didn't he? And there's still terrible things going on in the West Bank, so we got to address that and push back against that and what have you. But you would have never thought that he would have done anything he did if you just used reading his cabinet. So I'm not going to try to use his cabinet to read what he's going to do, because it don't work. How about this? Sparkster. Scott, will Russia have a naval base on the Straits of Hormuz as part of the recent Iranian deal? It would help them secure access to the Indian Ocean. They could co-locate with Iran if necessary. Good question. But you know what? Russia doesn't project military. Russia and China don't tend to project much military power, but it is possible that they could decide to do something like that with Iran. We will see. They're not big on projecting a lot of military power, but they have their bases in Syria, which may or may not be closing. I don't know. So it's possible. Who knows? It would be a good place for a Russian military base, but then it would be someplace away from Russia that they would have to protect. So maybe I can see reasons for it and reasons against it. Trump will turn it up to 11. All right. The Sparkster says, unlike Walton Hegseth, Rubio seems to realize his intellectual limitations. I think what he realizes is that he'll be fired if he doesn't do what he's told. I think that's what he realizes. And it's just a matter of time. We need to start a pool as to which member of Trump's cabinet will be the first to be fired. I'm going with, there's no way Rubio lasts 6 months. He's fired. He's going to get fired. How about Sparkster? Trump's secretary pick, Bissett, is a Soros CIA stooge. Brown University's Mark Blythe is much better. I know Blythe. Blythe knows how to recover an economy without subjecting people to crippling austerity. Interesting. I don't know what to, like I just said, I do not look at Trump's cabinet and try to use his cabinet to determine. I do think that as our buddy Dr. Jack Rasmus said, when during COVID they passed some laws that gave people some money. When they did that, It was written in the cards. Every time they do that, what comes after is austerity. So when they give it, they take it twice as much away. So they passed some laws to give people some extra money during COVID. Now what's getting ready to happen is they will do austerity twice as much and take back twice what they gave us. It always works, according to Dr. Jack Rasmus, and I agree with him. Sparkster, doesn't Zelensky know too much as far as the West is concerned? I have a feeling that he may be a goner because he does know too much. I agree with you, Spark. He knows way too much. Way too much. And snitches get stitches and end up in ditches. Ain't that right? Trump sends out absurd stuff so he can get feedback on an issue and read. Absolutely. But it's hilarious. You know what? Don't be like the, quote, liberals or whatever you want to call them. The first Trump administration, the liberals, oh my God, it was hilarious to watch Trump make them dance. It was hilarious to watch. All he had to do was tweet something over the top and they would just dance. They would scream. They would yell. The CNN, MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, every time he would. I think he enjoys the power of saying something extreme and then watching everybody react. And it's like, look how much power I got. Watch this, watch this. I'm going to say something that we know is absurd. I'm going to tweet that we can do this the hard way or the easy way. We can do this the hard way or the easy way. Watch this. And everybody's like, oh my God. Did you see what Trump said? And Trump says like, yeah. It's just too easy. It's just too easy. I ain't one of those people. You'll never see me dancing over a Trump tweet. I'm going to watch what he does. I don't give a damn what he says because it's a big freaking game. And he may get some people with that, but you're only going to get me once. I've been gotten too many times with that by Trump. And now I understand this game. He ain't getting me no more. It's hilarious. Trump uses tweets and Truth Social as a power game. He uses it specifically for manipulation. And the more extreme and controversial the tweet or post is, the more you know it ain't true. The more extreme and controversial, the more you know he's doing it for effect. And don't be had by that, like he did with the Democrats for 4 years. Sorry about that. He ain't getting me. He might get you, but not me. When I first out, who should I go to the doctor? Nah, you're fine, dude. You're good. Don't worry about it. You're good. If I was you, I'd just like chill out on that, chill, and just don't even worry about it. So that's perfectly nothing. Probably, I tell you what you do. Eat some jalapeno peppers. There you go. Just take a jalapeno pepper. You want to cure it and just bite down on that sucker, chew it up and swallow it. Trust me when I tell you that will address your issue. May not quite address it in the way you want to, but it'll address that issue. Jalapeno peppers, eat a whole handful of them. Cures what ails you. All right. Look, guys, I'm making a move for it. I'm making a move because I got to get ready for Mark Sloboda in 30 minutes. And we got plenty to ask him, and this is always going to be fun. So what I want you to do, if you can afford to donate to the channel, that's great. I love it. If you can join, I think it's $4.99 a month. Click the join button and become a member. If you can't, just use the money for your family. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Times are hard out here. And I used to when I taught the head of our department with the college that I taught at, used to always say, life is hard, but it's harder when you're stupid. I always thought that was funny. But at any rate, share this on all your social media platforms. Life is hard, but it's harder when you're stupid, right? I think that's it. I got a Substack. Go over there, check out my Substack stuff, and you can join Substack and my Substack. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Telegram, stuff like that. So you can't follow me on X because my stuff is still up there, but they won't let me in. If something's coming, I wanted to wait till after the inauguration. I kept waiting, and I said I'm going to wait for the inauguration before I make my move on Twitter. So the inauguration's over, so something's coming real soon, and you shall see. All right, thanks a lot. Have a great day, everybody. Share this everywhere. Bye.